What's up, everybody? My name's Mike Sjogren, here with my co-host,
Emmanuel Pani.
We're part of a group of specialized real estate investors you've probably never heard of.
We didn't start with deep pockets or wealthy families, and we don't rely on 401ks, mutual funds, or traditional real estate investing.
In fact, many of us don't even own the properties that fund our freedom. If you ask the money experts out there, they'd say what we do is impossible, yet it's happening every single day.
It's happening through a new niche called short-term rentals.
We are Short-Term Rental Nation, and these are our secrets. What's going on, STR Nation? Welcome back to another episode of the Short-Term Rental Secrets podcast. I'm your host, Mike Sjogren, here with my main man and brother from another mother, Mr. Emmanuel Pani. What's up, E?
My brother, good to see you once again. Just finished my second or third espresso of the day. As this podcast continue on, I just feel myself needing it. Funny, a couple weeks ago, I talked about like health and some of the like reshift there's a priority. So there's this gentleman called the Huberman podcast. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, it's good stuff.
Amazing stuff. So one of the things that I started doing from him, which goes against everything I believe in as an Italian, is I don't have my coffee immediately as I wake up, right? Because that was my natural thing, was to literally like crawl to the kitchen as I'm walking my dogs, turn on the coffee machine and drink it immediately. I now wait the first hour and a half of the day without having coffee. I actually have an AG1, which has also been another thing that I added to my life, which has been absolutely great.
You're talking about athletic greens, right?
Yes. Yeah, athletic green. And then there's this thing called morning routine, which is like lemon, like apple cider vinegar, lemon, salt, all in a little packet. So I squeeze all of those together and then have my coffee. And I know it feels weird to think about it, but honestly, like, it gets me to this point of the day. It's now like 4 o'clock. And I don't have the like, I need a pick me up. Like, I enjoy the coffee. It's part of how I live it. And it actually makes more of a difference when I drink it now, because I actually feel my energy spiking versus before was kind of like getting me out of a hole. So if you're like me, that you're like coffee before water in the morning, just give it an hour and
just try it. My coach told me that, and I've been doing that for about 6 months now, and I don't know all the science behind it, but he was explaining to me that like if you can wait the 90 minutes, it will be more effective. And again, I don't remember exactly all the science behind it, but like there was like some hormonal balance, I don't know, something where it was like as long as you just wait that 90 minutes, then you're good. And the coffee's fine, obviously not like crazy sugary coffee, but like just coffee or espresso or whatever. It's fine for you. So interesting fun fact, stay healthy so you can enjoy the fruits of your labor with the business.
Yeah, exactly. And also because like to me, it's just like it's the same thing. Like we're so focused about like hacking our wealth and our path to financial freedom. And then is the remembering that like if you hack your financial freedom but then you're sick or not healthy, why did you have
what's the point?
Exactly, you know what I mean? But after our usual rant, I'm super excited for our show today. Because I feel that it's going to be such a great learning show for everybody, myself included, and just such a fun energy and such an interesting topic, hot topic. So I can't wait for you to introduce her and for us to get going.
Yeah, let's do it, man. So today on the show, we have Miss Diya Liu. If you guys aren't familiar with Diya, she is a true lady boss in the hotelier and short-term rental space. She owns 4 hotels and a handful of STRs across the country. She was a patent litigation attorney, litigating multi-million-dollar tech and pharma products in a previous life before achieving financial freedom through short-term rentals. And since she has done a variety of creative STR acquisitions and dispositions, such as BRRRRs, wrapped notes, seller financing, wholesaling, double closing, and flips. And she's also the co-founder and CEO of the Welcome Capital Fund. So without further ado, Diya, welcome to the show.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, excited to have you. I'm, like we were saying offline, selfishly, I'm excited for the show so we can talk some shop. So let's go back to the beginning though, before we get into all the juice. So you had a very successful career in law. So kind of walk us back to that. And then what was that moment for you where you were like, you know what, I want to transition and make this shift?
I've always liked traveling. I always liked hotels. I grew up traveling and driving around the US. We didn't really have a lot of money, so we kind of crammed 6 to 8 people in one Motel 6 room and went to all the national parks and just really saw a lot of the USA that way. So I've always loved traveling. And when I went to law school and then became a patent litigation attorney, I finally, I guess, so-called achieved the American dream, so to speak. But I was working 9 to 9 most days, and sometimes 9 to midnight or past midnight, leading up to litigation and trial. So I really just didn't have a lot of financial freedom or time freedom or location freedom. And so I was living in New York City at the time, and I just decided that I set a goal for myself that I wanted to get started with real estate investing. I want to become financially free. I didn't know what that roadmap would look like, but I just kind of set a goal for myself. And I moved back to Austin, which is my hometown. I started with just house hacking, really, and renting out my rooms on Airbnb. And I just really fell in love with short term rentals because it gave me a lot more flexibility than long term rentals. It gave me more cash flow. It really tied into my love of traveling and really beautiful experiences and spaces and design. And it appealed to the engineering part of my brain as well as the legal part of my brain. I was a former engineering and biochem double major, so just a lot of
No big
analysis
deal.
and stuff. So, so I loved all the.
The titles like it's nothing. She's like, yeah, and also, I invented things and stuff whatnot, and she's like, yeah, whatever, I mean,
Um, I was also a fashion person, so I guess it just tied all the things I was nerdy about into one thing, and I didn't think that there was going to be any one job, so to speak, that would tie like my background and love of fashion design, my love of numerical analysis, my love of legal analysis into one single thing. But really, short-term rentals, it really just came all together that I'm analyzing deals, I'm negotiating contracts, and I get to design stuff. And sometimes I might even paint my own murals and and that shows my dad who told me I suck at drawing. So thanks, Dad.
Look at Dad. Oh, I love that. So I am a
Really.
self-admitted addict to the to that show Suits. I don't know if you've ever seen it, but
Oh
when
my
you
God.
like, I love that show. I've watched every season probably multiple times at this point. But immediately, I don't know why, but I always think of you when I watch that show. I'm just picturing you like just working those crazy ass hours in New York City, doing all that stuff, and now you're like, okay, yeah, I'm a different life now. Um, but anyway, so how did that journey go to get out of that? It also reminds me a lot of like Dr. Rach, right? Where you have that like traditional true American dream of like, I've got this amazing, attorney or doctor, some type of job, but you're just like not fulfilled. How did that transition go to get out of that and go full time?
It was really hard. I would say that for the first 2 years, it really just took me about 2 years to when I first started to really go all in on short term rentals to when I was able to quit my job. But I will say those were really tough 2 years just because I was already working at least 60 hours a week with my day job. But then during my off times or holidays or weekends, I will basically drive or fly to all my short-term rentals and do those setups myself. I didn't really know anything about renovations and I didn't know anything about and analyzing properties and etc. So just taking a lot of extra time for education, paying for education. Um, and it so over time, thanks to the fact that I had a job that can kind of helped me accelerate my financial independence by just saving and investing my own money. And I was able to get to 9 short-term rentals in about 2 years. So I was able to, and I had this whole grand plan of doing a round the world trip to celebrate the fact that I was going to be financially free in June 2020. But that obviously didn't happen because uh, of a little thing called COVID-19. So I kind of waffled whether I want to quit my job when the pandemic hit, but I just decided to go all in and quit around August 2020.
Wow. And then instead of the world trip, you start buying hotels. Is that what happened? Like, I cannot go on this world trip. Might as well just buy myself a hotel and then kind of start from there. Or where does, because, like, it's been an amazing journey and you could have kept doing what you were doing and doing the vacation rentals. But what brought on the bug for the hotels, and what did that journey look like?
I would say for the first year, I kind of focused on perfecting the art of short-term rentals a little bit more and understanding other types of ways to close SDR deals. So understanding how to use hard money, understanding how to use other people, private lenders, understanding how to find my own off-market deals. When I was an attorney, I didn't really have a lot of time to kind of figure out these things. So I kind of bought a lot of my short-term rentals just with the conventional mortgages products that are out there. But when I had more free time, I spent a lot of time studying other types of real estate investing methods and applying them to short-term rentals. But what really prompted me to look at hotels more was for a few reasons. One being I was reselling a lot of my short-term rentals just to kind of create additional capital to buy more stuff, or also because a lot of my properties had double in value thanks to the boom during the pandemic. So I was running into the problem of base valuation of STRs based on the sales comps, and that really frustrated me that I had a STR that I bought for 255, and I was making about 100 grand in that STR, so I wanted to resell it for 500. But the market had gone up a lot for that market, but it was still going to sell for closer to 400. But a turnkey STR that's making 100 grand, most people will happily pay 500K for, but the banks are not going to finance something like that. So that was really frustrating to me. So that was one reason why I started to look at commercial assets, because I wanted to be able to um, sell for more if my property is making more, rather than sell based on the sales comps of the area, that surrounding area. The second reason was that I knew that there was going to be more competition in the STR space. It felt like what were STRs as an asset class was getting more mainstream around 2021. So I felt like to stay competitive, I should look at some other adjacent assets that are, like at the time I thought it was just going to be the same, just bigger. I was kind of wrong because hotels are very different. But so I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna buy a bigger STR. Then I'm gonna be like still the best in like a small pond. And so that was my second reason. And the third reason was because of STR regulations, and I wanted to try my hand at towns that were enacting STR regulations, and I would be one of the few folks that was able to do daily rentals in a restricted market.
Beautiful. Yeah. And that makes a lot of sense. And I think that's a frustration that a lot of people have kind of felt. Mike talks about this a lot, right? Is the fact that like on the hotels, you can just go like, listen, it's black and white. We used to make X, now we make Y, and we are worth now twice as much because the property makes twice as much money. Whereas in real estate, when you're dealing with that appraiser, the appraiser is going to look at the use, and like if the person goes and buys the property, it doesn't want it as an STR. He's like, I can't, even though you make that much money, I can't appraise it for that much because it's actually based on the use of the house, which is still a single family. And Diya is like, okay, rather than probably your legal background will help you, right? Rather than argue with a pig and teaching him how to fly, I'm just gonna like move on from this whole conversation altogether. I'm just gonna move into hotels. Kind of share with us where that realization came to you. Like, wait, I thought these were gonna be just like STRs. They're not. So what was that realization like? And what are some of the lessons that you learned? If we have a listener there's like, oh, I'm gonna do the same thing.
And how big was the first one? Because
Yeah.
I talk about this all the time. Similar. I'm like, yeah, I'm going to run it like a bigger STR and it's going to be the same. But I'm curious, like how big was it? And then what were some of those lessons that you learned once you got it going?
I think the first thing was it was harder to close my first hotel by far. I think with short-term rentals, people have this false sense of confidence because they're like, oh, I can just go out and find a hotel realtor and then buy a hotel, and that's it. I think that's a lot easier with STRs just because you can get pretty much anyone with a decent paying job can get qualified for a loan, and then you can just find an STR realtor that's pretty good at what they're doing, and then you can just buy a STR. But with hotels, it's very different just because first of all, some hotel brokers, this might be their first hotel. They have no, they don't really understand the books that the sellers have, and also each seller has very different P&Ls and stuff. And I've seen ones where the P&L was handwritten, so it's been very interesting to kind of see the differences in terms of the just it's been a lot harder to analyze these deals because there's not as much of a standardized P&Ls, or and then also in terms of data, it's not going to be STR data, it's going to be hotel data. So just understanding how to underwrite hotels as commercial assets and not just as a bigger STR. That was one of the bigger realizations. And also a lot of deals don't end up penning out when it's a hotel versus when it's STR. I pretty much closed almost 100% of the STRs I was under contract for. But for hotels, for the first 8 or 9 deals that I was looking at, I was under letter of intent, LOI for, where I was under contract for. A lot of those didn't end up working out. And then finally, the biggest thing was financing, just because it's going to be much more difficult to finance a hotel if you don't have previous hotel experience. So for our first deal, we bought a 48 key hotel, and it was definitely a big jump, but we felt really comfortable about it just because it was in really good condition, despite it being from the 1980s. And it was in a town where all the other hotels were ugly. So just from my STR background, I knew that if we made this pretty, then we will beat everyone else in that market. And then also there were STR regulations that were being enacted. So I also knew that we would be pretty much the only folks on Airbnb legally in town, if or one of the few folks in town that would be on Airbnb. And then finally, after about a few months of back and forth negotiations, I was able to negotiate seller financing at 6% interest, and the first year being interest only. And so, and then, and we were able to get it at a really good price. So we got it for $750K for a 48.
48?
Yeah.
Damn.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That is amazing. Ironic too, because our first deal was much smaller. It was 13 units, but it was the same thing. We were able to get seller financing, kind of skirted around all the traditional lending for a hotel. So 48 keys, when you guys acquired that, once you took it over, we don't need to get super in the weeds, but from a high level, did you build a management team in-house? Did you hire out a third-party management company? Like, how did that go for that? Because that's quite a big jump. 48 units is a big jump. Yeah. So how did that go?
And did you have to rent it also? Did you have rent stuff to do?
Yeah, we did have to renovate it. And so it had like hot pink carpet and popcorn ceilings and this granny chic bedspread, and also granny chic wallpaper on the back.
Granny chic?
Granny chic, yeah.
I might have to steal that term. I love that.
Granny chic, just sleek. Modern sleek or something, rustic sleek. I don't know. Like it has to rhyme, right? So, but you can see what the results of the hotel rooms are in my virtual background. That's what it looks like for 16 of the rooms now. We didn't upgrade all the rooms yet. Some of them are more, we did do one luxury Airbnb type accommodation. And then we have 16 renovated rooms, and the other ones are just merely touched up. And the reason we did that is because there's still a lot of economy class bookings coming in. So we're trying to see like what is the true ROI of converting the remainder of the 16 rooms, or is there really demand for another 16 renovated rooms? And then the back building, we are looking at if this Airbnb type accommodation is going to be really successful, where we're going to do more larger full kitchen residences in the back building. Um, in terms of operations, we were really lucky, and this is also why we ended up buying this deal out of all the other hundreds of deals that we analyzed. It's because we already had an existing hotel manager that was willing to stay on the property at least for a year or so to help us transition. And she's been with the property for a very long time. She comes highly recommended by our the previous sellers. So, and then also that we knew that these sellers would be super helpful towards and basically introduce us to everyone in town, and that's very, very important. In terms of team, we have a very, very small team there right now. We just have 2 full-time staff, and and then 2 cleaners, and that's about it. So we are probably going to have to hire more in advance of the peak season, just because this is going to be our first season where we have been open and we're able to take bookings well in advance. Last year we were fully booked during the peak season, but it was just all hands on deck kind of thing. But this year we're really going to hire additional cleaning team before the fall peak season.
Love
Yeah,
that.
that makes sense.
I want to, we were talking offline, and I definitely want to dive into the market analysis and like, where do you find data? Because that is also very different on the hotel side. And I know I ran into some struggles on my first deal because there just wasn't much available for the market that I was in. So let's talk about just like analyzing markets and analyzing deals for a bit around like, where do we get data for hotels? Do we just go to AirDNA? Do we like, what does that look like? And then we can dive a little bit deeper on like analyzing properties.
I think everyone's strategy might be slightly different. I know people who are very data driven. And even for STRs, a lot of people, some people will look at the global or USA nationwide data and kind of curate a few target locations from that. For me, it was more like I've always liked areas that's within 2 to 3 hour driving distance from major metros or growing metros. So whenever I'm analyzing a market, I'm looking at what's the general population within a 2 to 3 hour radius, and is that population growing? That's one of the most important things for me. And then also what are the natural disaster risks, etc. Like before, so I look at a lot of global trends before I look at the actual numbers. In terms of the numbers, AirDNA and Data Reboot can be helpful in terms of tourism trends and seasonality and stuff as a cross reference, but we mostly rely on CoStar data for hotels. So we always look at the hotel data in terms of what is a revenue per available room or RevPAR in that area. We are looking at whether that RevPAR number is going up or down. We're looking at the RevPAR number between different classes of hotels: economy, mid-scale, upscale, luxury, for example. And then we're also looking at the sales price per key, whether that's going up and down, and what is this hotel selling for relative to all those factors. And then finally, we're looking at the cap rate and for that market, and then seeing what this hotel is selling at relative to what cap rate this hotel is selling at relative to the market. And because the interest rate is going up, a lot of folks have said that you really have to analyze each hotel deal at a 1% higher cap rate than what the CoStar data is showing right now, just because CoStar data is 12 months trailing. So even though the interest rates have gone up a lot more in the last 12 months, so the data is really about a year lagging in terms of where the cap rate is. So we've been adding 1% to any cap rate that we find on CoStar.
Awesome.
On CoStar, they have a lot, and I'm just trying to give some more context for folks that are really trying to dive in, because CoStar has a lot of different products on the commercial side. Are we talking like there like str.com stuff, or is there other stuff like within CoStar? I know they have a ton of reports and stuff too, but just for a little more context, I guess.
Okay, so it's really just general CoStar, not the star reports, because the star reports we do look at star reports that sometimes sellers will provide. The larger sellers with franchise hotels, they might actually have star reports provided as part of the seller's package. But we're just talking about the market overview analysis. So that usually breaks down what the sales price per key is in general, and then also what the sales price per key is for economy hotels or for mid-scale hotels or for luxury hotels. And then it also shows the same sort of broken down by offering and class of hotels for RevPAR, ADR, occupancy, etc. So that's kind of what we use. We sometimes will get a star report pulled as well. That's very, very helpful if it's a larger purchase. But usually we will rely more on CoStar, the main
Yeah.
product.
The reason I ask is just because when folks start exploring this, the issue I was referring to before is the way that the star reports work is you only can get data if the hotels in the market report to star. And
Mhm.
so it's like you pay them an annual fee and I submit monthly data to them. And then in return, I get a comp set every month. But if no other hotels submit,
Yeah.
like one of our markets, there's no data to give you.
Yeah.
So just be aware of that.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I think CoStar bought Star, so I think
Yes.
I think this CoStar data may actually be pulled from Star. Anyway, don't quote me on that. I'm pretty sure that's where the CoStar hotel data does come from. So it's kind of the same thing. So if there's not a lot of folks that are joining the Star program in a market, then the CoStar data is not going to be as accurate as some of the other markets.
Yeah. And then walk us through. So, like, we have talked about this offline as well. It's just like sometimes, for example, the latest one you bought, it's a flagship hotel. So, like, I assume that like all of the records and the P&Ls you get are pretty accurate. And then some other stuff you got a piece of paper scribbled by the seller that says like, I think I paid Joe the landscaper this much a month, and so on and so forth, right? So, like, when you're looking at the numbers, the actual numbers, like now you have identified the property and you're looking at the actual numbers. How did you distinguish what's good, what's realistic, and then what do you run your analysis on to
Yeah.
see whether or not you want to buy the place?
So yeah, so P&L is definitely very wildly. I will say that I normally look at the P&L mostly just for the expenses column than the profit column or the gross revenue column, just because I'm looking closer at the CoStar data for what the pro forma gross revenue will be. I am looking at the actual financials to see how long we are going to have to pay for the mortgage out of pocket and how easy it is going to get bank financing. So if it's currently going to cash flow based on the current market interest rate, it's going to be infinitely easier for us to get a really, really good banking product. If there isn't a lot of gross revenue, it's not like it's a completely no answer. It just means that we might have to work a lot harder to find financing, or we have to go back and negotiate seller financing. And use that P&L to as our bargaining chip. I think one of the things that I want to mention with the P&L is that there's so many hidden expenses that someone may not know exist when they're looking at someone's P&L. And then there's so many ways to add extra expenses as well, like in preparing the P&L. So having someone who understands how to read the P&L and how to ask the right questions is very, very crucial. For example, if a hotel is currently a mom and pop hotel and a family of 5 is helping out at the hotel and they're living on site and they're all chipping in and they're getting paid $0 an hour, well, I've seen a lot of folks who are looking to implement like more of a remote hotel operation model, and they get really surprised that, oh my gosh, we actually have to hire people and pay people, and instead of having 5 free hands to help on site, we're going to have a larger operational expense. And so that's one of the things I see a lot. Another thing is that, franchise fees, if you're taking that out, a lot of people just simply take that out. They're deflagging a hotel, but sometimes that does mean that you're going to have additional marketing fees that are for your independent branded hotels to make up for that. So you can't just simply take that franchise fee off and expect everything else to remain the same. So there's just so many things. If you are, you know, looking to renovate, you have to make sure that there's going to be the accurate financial projections to account for the number of days that it's going to be offline. I think people always underestimate how long renovations take. It's always going to take at least twice as long as you think it's going to take. And guests don't love construction on the property either. And there could be also nails on the property too, so in the parking lot. So there's just a lot of things that you had to watch out for when it's a hotel versus just a single family STR.
Mm. Oh, so many directions we could go off of that. Out of curiosity, and again, just to give them a little context, and it may vary. I know it will vary the greater size you go and the more things that you offer. But on average, like our portfolio is doing anywhere from like 58 to 62% expense ratio. And again, these are small. They're like 13 and 21. I think we're going to have a lot more efficiencies, probably around like 53% expense ratio on the bigger one. So I'm bringing this up just because I've analyzed some deals like you have where I focus more on where I think I can get the revenue to, see what their current expenses are, and then kind of adjust those based on some of our portfolio in that area. If somebody's brand new, looking at some hotels, one of the biggest mistakes I see is one, not budgeting enough for the renovation and the time, like you said. And then two is just not analyzing the expenses, or they're just way too low. Do you have a rule of thumb that you like to use when you're just like back of the napkin math when you're analyzing these to see if it would even make sense?
I would say where you're at with your hotels is kind of a good start. I think when it also comes to the class of hotels. So, like, I think limited service mid scale is going to be more, I think like a 40 to 50% expense ratio if you run it the way that we're doing, versus a luxury hotel might go up to 60, 70%. So it just really depends. I think a lot of people want this super luxury product, and then they have all these great ideas sometimes with stars in their eyes. What they don't realize is that that's going to be a lot of extra expenses, and it might actually not be additional ROI. So I would say, yeah, it kind of depends on the offering, but I think it will be probably similar to where you're basing your assumptions at for independent hotels.
Yeah. And then for the flagged hotels, is I've never purchased one, so I'm just curious. Is what typically comes with like the franchise fee? Like they don't necessarily give you a management team, but they basically give you all the systems and they incorporate you into like their corporate website and marketing and things like that. Or what I guess is included with some of that stuff typically.
And full disclosure, I'm not the ops guy on our franchise hotel, but I can tell you just by helping negotiate the franchise contract and what that goes into it, and just helping with the initial onboardings process. Franchises differ based on which brand it is. So there's like Hilton and Marriott's, and then there's like Choice, Wyndham. Those are probably the most popular franchise brands. Choice and Wyndham, they're a little bit lower on the franchise fee in terms of the totem pole, whereas Marriott and Hilton have higher franchise fees usually. And then in terms of pretty much all fees, Hilton and Marriott is going to have a lot more. They also have a lot more expectations for staffing and etc., which is why they have achieved this elite status, because guests know Hilton and Marriott. They know there's always a hot breakfast, or there's always amazing room service or whatever that is, but that does come with like a lot of additional fees, a lot of additional necessary staffing. Um, with our hotel is currently a Wyndham property for the next 12 months or so. So I can speak about Wyndham specifically, and I will say that they're helping us market on the Wyndham site. And so a lot of people just stay just because it is a microtel by Wyndham. And so this is one of the approved brands that they're allowed to use when they're doing corporate traveling. So Bentonville, Arkansas, it's not just a leisure market, it's also a very high corporate travel market. So there's a lot of because that's where the Walmart headquarters are, and so a lot of vendors that are coming in to meet with Walmart, they will end up staying at our hotel. There's a lot of construction going on, and just flipping construction, new construction, whatever, in our town. So right now, because we're more of an economy stay hotel, we end up also having a lot of these vendors for construction companies as well. So it's a pre-approved brand with a lot of these companies, and so it kind of brings in a set of clientele already. They know exactly what to expect from a microtel brand. And then the other thing is that we do get tied into their events system. So for any sort of requests for bids for events that are upcoming in the area, we also get a notification for an RFP. And then also we have an in-house revenue manager person who is assigned to this area. She's been doing revenue management for Bentonville hotels, for Wyndham for a long time now. So, and then we also get all their software as well as part of the process. But the OTA fees are on top of the franchise fees. So that's the kicker, is that you're paying for two sets of fees. You're paying for like Expedia, hotels.com fees, and then you're also paying for the franchise fees on top of that. And then another downside is that you have to charge the same amount on Expedia as you are charging on Wyndham. So there's very little incentive for people to book directly through Wyndham, like if they know Expedia or they traveled through all these other sites more. But now you are like incentivizing people to book through the channel that you get charged both OTA fees as well as the franchise fees for. So that's like the downside. Because I know a lot of STR folks, when they're encouraging their guests to book direct with them, they can give them a discount. But we actually can't do that when we're tied to a franchise. So hopefully that will change when we switch over to independent next year.
Gotcha.
Awesome.
If he doesn't have questions, I'm going to keep going.
No, I mean, like, no, I have my question and was more related to the earlier conversation, but to me, it's been so like using seller financing has been such a great way that we have built our wealth, and I think people maybe can understand how to have the conversation on a smaller scale. But I wanted to see if you have any like suggestion or hacks on how people can approach that conversation at a big scale. Like you buy in this hotel and you go to the seller, you're like, hey, I need owner financing. So what are some of the like things or tricks or things that you've like leveraged in your favor to have a successful seller financing kind of conversation with a seller?
I think the big thing about negotiations in general is that it can't be just an ask on your end. Like it can't be like, hey, seller, do me a favor. And that can't be the overall tone of what you're asking for. Instead, we always pitch it as a solution to their problem. And it is because if the seller's retiring, then it might actually be more beneficial from a tax perspective for them to do an installment sale instead of and we always say like, hey, you can always check with their CPA to see if this is actually the case for you, like, and come back to us or whatever. But often we're saving sellers taxes because they're seller financing to us. Or another way that we're pitching it is that they want a certain price, even though they don't have very good financials. And given the current banking market, it's going to be very hard for them to sell it any other way. And so we are working with them to help them sell their product. Or sell their hotel. So I always pitch it as a solution to their problem rather than, hey, I want seller financing because I can't get financing right now. I always say, like, hey, do you know you can save on taxes if you seller finance to us? Or hey, do you know that you can sell it for the asking price, closer to asking, if you seller finance or work with us for a few years? And so that's usually how we pitch it. And then it's really just up to understanding how to negotiate, to make sure that your team is protected in any sort of creative financing deal. So understanding how to negotiate balloons, understanding how to negotiate interest, amortization versus interest only payments, understanding, just all those things is really helpful in making sure that both parties are happy in when they walk away from the table.
One thing you said earlier, I want to tie it back into what you just said because I think it's super important. A lot of obviously we always want to get the best deal humanly possible, and I've seen some people try and push that too far. But you talked about at the beginning, and I have found this immensely true, is that you want to keep a good relationship with the seller, because when you take that over, when certain things come up, I have all 3 of the hotels that we bought. I have this previous seller's cell phone number, and it doesn't happen often, but especially when you take it over, you may have forgotten to ask them a question about some certain thing. But if you burn that bridge and absolutely destroy them in the negotiation and kind of force their hand to sell, they have no incentive to help you. Right. So just keep that in the back of your mind, that like there's certain things or certain relationships that maybe they have that will be an intangible asset for you once you take the property over.
Yeah. Very, very true. And I think that it also helped us land the seller financing because we already had built a personal relationship with the seller and they really wanted us to succeed. And so, actually, for our first hotel, when it first, there was a snowstorm and we're not used to snowstorms, so we didn't have any snow equipment. So the seller came over and just started shoveling snow. And we're like, we have a free employee for the day. Like it was quite nice of him. And so yeah, we're really close to our previous sellers just because we try to build that relationship first and then try to create a win-win situation for the sale so that they're happy with what they did and we're happy with what we got as well.
Love that. Love that.
Awesome.
Well, I feel like we could do a part 2 to this and go even deeper on some stuff.
Yeah. I mean, this has been so much fun. And I feel like we're like hardly kind of like gone over the surface. Like I would have loved to ask you like what the vision is, because I assume somebody that has had the journey that you have quite a plan as to what's kind of coming. So maybe you can give us like what the goals are for this next like 12 to 18 months. So that we have kind of like a little sneak peek to like what you're working on. And then we can have you on for a secondary show where we literally go into like the large vision of your hotel brand, which I assume it's something that it's in the works.
Yeah, absolutely. So in a nutshell, we are raising $10 million this year to buy 8 to 10 hotels at 30 to 40% discount. And I can go into a whole essay on why hotels are for sale this year, but I'm not going to go into that. And so I co-founded Welcome Capital with 3 of my business partners. And so we're buying, it's supposed to be for STRs and hotels, but we've had a lot more luck with hotels recently, just being able to buy at a discount versus just STRs. So we have that going. And then meanwhile, I help folks, learn more about hotel acquisitions as well, so that we basically have a larger team to help us analyze hotel deals and stuff like that. So that's another initiative I'm building. So yeah, we have an in-person small training event in North Carolina in August at our 19-unit boutique hotel here in Hendersonville, North Carolina, which is where I'm sitting right now. And so we're going to go through a lot of deals in person as well.
Love that. Do you got any links for that stuff people can go check out?
I do. Do I just text it? Do I just send that to you guys, or?
Yeah, if it's a long link, you can send it, and we'll make sure it gets down in the show notes.
Okay, that would be awesome. But folks who are just watching this live, you can also message me on on Instagram at DiyaESQ as well.
Love it. Love it. Well, Diya, thank you for coming on here. Before we get into the last question, I just want to acknowledge you. And it's always a pleasure talking to you and just seeing your journey and all the amazing things that you got going on. So thank you for coming on the show. Appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.
And so the last question that we ask all of our guests, I'm going to reframe it a little bit, but what is your number one secret to success with boutique hotels?
Ooh, okay. It's hard. There's so many things. Number one is to never overpay in real estate. So we always try to buy 30 to 40% off relative to what the sales comps are. And we just have a lot more, we just have a lot more exit strategies because we already bought and we already made money just by buying at a lower price and having built in equity from day one.
Love it. Love it. Real estate fundamentals, baby. Awesome. Well, Diya, thank you again for being on the show. Like I said, we'll definitely have to schedule a part 2, and we'll make sure to get all the links down in the show notes for you guys. And for listeners, if you're interested in boutique hotels, you're going to want to listen to this one a couple times. Make sure you follow Diya. And that's it for this week, guys. Have an amazing week, and we'll talk to you soon.
Ciao, guys.
Hey, STR Nation, if you enjoyed this episode, please make sure to hit that subscribe button and leave us a review. And in the comments, let us know what topics you want us to cover on upcoming episodes, and we'll make sure to get that in the books for you. And if you really want to learn how to launch, automate, and scale your short-term rental business, if you want to go deeper, then check out our free masterclass at strsecrets.com.